drive. Tatum to finish. It is banner 18. The mission commanding is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston, right after the Celtics closed their season with a 61st win, a 93-86 clutch time victory over the Charlotte Hornets. And this one was not won by the usual cast of characters. Peyton Pritchard does lead the way with 34 points on 14 of 25 shooting, 7 assists, 7 rebounds, just kind of solidifying his spot as a season finale legend. That's 3 consecutive years that Pritchard has scored at least 30 points. But alongside him is guys that really don't get much run who kind of close this out. JD Davison, Jordan Walsh hit the 2 key shots down the stretch. JD hits a drive with 2 minutes to go to give the Celtics a 2-point lead. Jordan Walsh follows that with a go-ahead three-pointer, a dagger three-pointer, I should say, that gave the Celtics a 5-point lead. And they came away with a second consecutive win over the Hornets. They came away with their 61st win overall. It's the best record by defending champions since 2015-2016 when the Warriors followed up their 2015 championship with a 73-win season. And we all know how difficult it is to repeat. Nobody's done it since the Warriors in 2017 and 18. And nobody's actually even made it out of the second round since then, as we're often reminded. And so this season right now, I'll talk a little bit about this game, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about just what the Celtics accomplished this season. And Sean Grande, the radio play-by-play guy for 98.5, he compiled a bunch of interesting statistics that I think are worth diving into as we reflect on what this season was and how poised this team is to repeat entering the playoffs. And a lot of it is going to depend on health. It's going to depend on matchups. It's going to depend on other teams. And can somebody knock out the Thunder before they even make it to the finals? Who knows? And so there's a lot that they might have to overcome, that they probably will have to overcome to repeat. But this team is as poised as any that I've seen in a very long time to do that. And so just looking at the numbers here, this team outscored opponents by over 9 points per game. Luke Hornet had the highest net rating on the team, outscoring opponents. When he's on the floor, the Celtics are outscoring opponents by 15 points per game, third best in the NBA. They have the 4th best offense in NBA history. So last year's team had the best offense in NBA history. This year's team has the 4th best, the most threes in NBA history, the 2nd most road wins in NBA history. Had they won that Orlando Magic game, they would have tied the Warriors for the most road wins. They had a moment in time where they won 17 of 18 road games. And this is probably the most impressive part. They were 19-2 following a loss this season. So 2 losing streaks of 2 games. In the last 2 years, since I started covering this team has never lost 3 in a row. It's honestly insane to think about. They've never lost 3 in a row in 2 seasons of 82-game seasons with travel and resting guys and injuries and slumps. Even in December and January when they were struggling and everybody was kind of focused on the fact that they weren't playing their best basketball and different guys were struggling to varying degrees, they never lost more than 2 games in a row. In fact, they only lost 2 games twice in a row. So it's just kind of insane when you think about it. I won't rattle off all the stats because you can read them for yourself, but just as I was walking away from TD Garden today, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, this was a pretty insane season, and I didn't expect them to win 61 games. I didn't know that there were going to be 2 other teams that were having historic seasons of their own in the Thunder and the Cavs. The Thunder had the highest net rating of any team in NBA history, and the Cavs led the conference by double-digit games for most of the year. So I didn't know that there were going to be 2 of these historic teams, having their years at the same time as the Celtics, but I didn't expect them to get 61 wins anyways. And so they exceeded my expectations, especially when you think about the injuries that players faced. Porzingis missing the first, quarter of the season, and then also missing some time, 12 games with illness. Jaylen Brown being really limited by a knee injury for the second half of the year. Drew Holiday dealing with various ailments, like Derek White with various things. So it wasn't like they had the season of like they were the picture perfect health, but they were able to overcome the things that they were dealt with. And I remember in December and January when Derek White and other guys were talking about how difficult the stretch was, there was this common understanding of like, if we can get through this together, we're going to be better off for it. And if they do win the championship in June, I think that stretch of basketball in December and January where they were playing 500 basketball for about 6 weeks, and Derek White famously lost his joy, and everybody was struggling, and guys were in slumps, and nobody could figure out exactly what the problem was. That might be the stretch that wins them a championship, because you have to overcome adversity. They didn't have a ton of adversity last year. Really smooth sailing season, smooth sailing playoffs. Even with Kristaps being out, like they never were really tested in a playoff series. They were never down in a series. They were up every single time. I think maybe the worst position they were in is when they were, they dropped game 2 to Miami, and everybody was like, oh my God, are they going to lose in 7 games to Miami again? But overall, they really had control of last year. And this year, I think there was a moment in time where people were like, is this team worse? Like, do they lose it? Do they lose what it is that made them great? And I don't think anybody thinks that anymore just a few months later. And honestly, they never turned on each other in the media. They never threw each other under the bus. They never expressed any doubt of their own. I remember Kristaps telling us multiple times, like, I have no doubt that we are going to be fine. We are going to peak at the right time. We're going to turn this thing around. Tatum said the same thing. He said, we're going to be better off for this. Joe Mazzulla never wavered. And here you are in April. And once again, they're at the top of all these records for both franchise history and also NBA history. 960 turnovers this season, the fewest in franchise history. Like, there's just so much. Pretty remarkable when you kind of go down the line and look at all the stats that they were able to rack up. And again, none of this stuff matters. We know that. Pritchard reminded us that when we were asking him about the road record and whether they were going to pursue it. None of this matters. All that matters is that they win a championship. And we won't know whether or not they do that for another few months or maybe less if they get eliminated early. But right now, I would say that every indicator from this past season gives me confidence that they're in as good of a position to do that as we could have possibly hoped for entering the playoffs. And the only thing that gives you pause is the existence of these 2 other powerhouses that it's very rare that there are 3 teams in the NBA that were this historic at the same time. If you go down the line, like maybe 2016, not even 2016. I'm trying to think like when there were other teams like this. There was the year where it was the Spurs and the Heat, and they were both having historic seasons, but I can't even remember what year that was off the top of my head. So in any case, I think you look at everything that went into this year and you feel pretty good about it if you're a Celtics fan. I wanted to zoom in from the big picture to today's afternoon game, Fan Appreciation Day. The Celtics rest their top 6 players, the starters, and Al Horford. Everybody was in the building, even Jaylen Brown, who I hadn't seen for a little bit of time now, who reportedly got injections earlier in the week, per ESPN's Ramona Shelburne. And everybody was there. People were watching from the bench, watching from the locker room, whatever. But the starting lineup was the same starting lineup they ran against the Magic on Wednesday. Torrey Craig, Sam Hauser, Baylor Shireman, Luke Cornett, Peyton Pritchard. But better outcome today in part because they were playing a far inferior team. They were playing the bench Hornets versus the other day they were playing a very hungry Orlando team that was needing to win that game to secure playoff positioning. And early on, they caught fire from 3. I think they hit like 7 of their first 14 threes. They jumped out to a double-digit lead, and then obviously the shooting cooled off, and the Hornets heated up a little bit. They were like 0 for 11 at one point. And then this became a game. It became a game where they were going back and forth, and this was a competitive one. And you saw ultimately Peyton Pritchard play 38 minutes. He wanted to win. He wanted to compete. I asked Joe about it afterwards. He said, yeah, like he wants to be out there. It was never a doubt. You saw him play a pivotal role here, and not just Pritchard was scoring a bunch and hitting a bunch of threes because he was only 4 of 12 from 3. But Pritchard was also in position here to kind of spearhead an effort. He was getting double teamed. He was getting, very much game planned against. I think Charles Lee knew everybody was going to sit except for Pritchard. He knows Pritchard very well. He coached him in Boston last year as the assistant coach of the Celtics. And Pritchard had a difficult time, and he still found a way to score 34 points on 14 of 25 shooting. Thought that was a very impressive performance. His ability to get other guys going as well. And then we saw other guys. Jordan Walsh comes off the bench, 21 points. I thought that was one of his best games as a Celtic. He scored 10 points on 4 of 7 shooting, 8 rebounds, 2 offensive, 2 steals, and a block and an assist. And made a big 3 down the stretch, as I mentioned, a dagger 3 from the corner. And that's huge because obviously 3-point shooting is going to be so critical to him. And, if he's going to find a spot in the Celtics or in the NBA, he's probably going to have to become a good shooter. And there's an open question around how good of a shooter he is right now. He was around like 35-36% last year in the G League. And then JD Davison played one of the best stints that I can remember him playing as a Celtic, if not the best. He comes off the bench 17 minutes, and he scores 9 points, 4 assists, 2 steals. He didn't have the best shooting game. He was 4 of 11 from the field, but a couple of them just totally rimmed out. So he was there. He was feeling confident. But JD has what I thought was a really good game, fresh off of a massive, massive moment in his life, and that's that he signed a standard NBA contract. And I was so happy for JD because I think probably a lot of you guys know I've been following him quite closely as he had this ridiculous run in the G League where he was named MVP and led the way for the main Celtics as they kind of turned their season around, made the playoffs, made the conference finals, ultimately lost to the Osceola Magic, but en route to that, JD was named MVP. He averaged 25 points, 7.4 assists. In the playoffs, he upped those numbers to almost 34 points and 14 assists. And I was in the locker room in New York, and Jaylen Brown kind of came in and was poking fun at JD for Mac McClung putting 42 points on them. And I told JD, like, you better tell him what your postseason averages were. And JD did not tell him. And so I told Jaylen his postseason averages, and Jaylen was like, he learned those assist numbers from me. So definitely the 14 assists are JD's doing, but I think you could see flashes of that playmaking. I mean, those 4 assists tonight, I was like, I see a little bit of the JD from the G League that we all know is a phenomenal player, and we just haven't seen that guy in Boston. We haven't seen him with the big leagues, and a lot of people wonder, like, what is it about the NBA? Can he not play in the NBA? Like, is this league too different for him? And it never made sense to me, this idea that he couldn't translate his game at all. Maybe it's not going to be the same. I mean, it's obviously not going to be the same. But he talked about it today. In the NBA, he's not going to have the ball in his hand nearly as much, so he's to get more comfortable playing off ball. In the NBA, it's more physical. The speed is more it's a much faster game, and so there's things that you have to adjust to. But there's also the understanding that you're going to make mistakes, and he has to be himself, and he has to be okay with making mistakes, and things aren't going to always go his way. And so to me, it's looked like a mental block a lot of the times. Like even on Wednesday against Orlando, he airballed a few shots, like wide open shots. And it's like, you can say whatever about the NBA versus the G League, but JD Davison does not airball 3-pointers in the G League, right? Like that's a very rare thing to happen, just like anybody else. But in the NBA, all of a sudden he's doing that because I think he's shooting the weight of the world. He really is. And at the end of the day, it's not going to all of a sudden be the pressure's gone, but when you're fighting for a spot in the NBA, it really hurts you. And that's why you see teams where a bunch of guys are vying for spots, vying for contracts. It doesn't put out a good product out there. You don't want to have a roster filled with guys who are playing for a contract, and it makes guys play more selfishly. It puts more pressure on them. It's a different kind of pressure than just like, oh, I have to hit a game winner. It's a pressure of like trying to show out, and nobody wants to be in that position. And I don't think JD was like being a ball hog or anything like that. In fact, I think it went more in the other direction where he was kind of quiet out there. He didn't want to make any big mistakes, and in turn, he was like too not aggressive that he was turning the ball over from those types of plays. But tonight, I thought he looked much better than he has in a very long time, and I do think the shot's going to come around. Like I think he could have easily been 7 of 11 of this one because he had good looks. He got to his spots. He didn't rush it. He was in a good position. And I'm not going to say like, oh, JD, he had his best game just because he signed the contract. But I do think there's a correlation with like the weight being lifted off his shoulders. This was 3 years in the making. He was a two-way player with the Celtics, drafted 53rd overall in 2022. Spends 2 years in Maine. People thought maybe he won't come back in the summer. And he comes back and he puts the best season together that we've ever seen from him. One of the best seasons in Maine Celtics history, if not the best. Becomes the franchise scoring leader, assists leader, steals leader. He's a legend up there. Every time I go up to Portland, everybody's obsessed with JD Davison. And he did that, and he led this team to a ton of wins because that was a priority. He didn't want to play losing basketball. And when I talked to him the other day in Madison Square Garden, he told me like one of the biggest points of pride for him were the fact that he made his teammates better and the fact that he gave his teammates opportunities too. And Don Carey Jr. is playing in New Zealand now, and Philip Wheeler got a 10-day in Philadelphia. Like he brought those things up to me. Is like, that's what I'm proud of from this season. And when you have that mindset of you're going to play the right way, you're going to elevate your teammates, you get rewarded. And yesterday, after he finished his workout, he gets a call from Brad Stevens, and Brad Stevens tells him, "Hey, I see you. I see the strides you've made, and we're giving you a standard deal." And I talked to some people. Sources tell me that the second year of the deal is not guaranteed, so there's a team option, which is kind of not surprising, but for his sake, obviously you hope that the Celtics pick up that option. It might depend on what else is available this summer. It might depend on how he performs over the next few months here, even if it's just in practice or if he does get some limited opportunities in the playoffs. But now JD will be eligible to play in the postseason. He was not eligible last year. Last year, him and Drew Peterson were sitting in the crowd in street clothes. And now that'll be Drew Peterson and Miles Norris, who they signed in early March, who I actually liked a lot of things about his game. Those two guys are going to be the two ways, while JD is going to be on the bench wearing regular Celtics clothes and eligible to check in. Even in a blowout game, he might get that opportunity now, which obviously is super cool for him. So I'm really happy for him. I still think it's an uphill battle for him to kind of carve out a spot on this team or just in the NBA in general. That's just the nature of things. If you look at the guys that have been G League MVPs, not a lot of them have been able to carve out real NBA careers. And I do think that there's something to be said about that it's two different worlds, and a guy that really thrives with the ball in their hand and dominates in the G League is not necessarily going to be able to transition to now being a role player in the NBA, but he is set on doing it. He said that he called his mom. She was crying. Everybody in his hometown is praying for him. He's from small town Alabama. He was telling us, he grew up playing basketball on outdoor courts. There are no indoor courts. And Ben Wallace, Hall of Famer Ben Wallace, grew up in the town, just a rival town from him, and that he always knew that story. He knew that he made it, and that kind of was a guidepost for him that he could do it as well. So talk more about JD, talk more about this game, but first, a message from our friends over at PrizePicks.
PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. Springtime is here, baseball season is underway, and don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond to your PrizePicks lineup, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Take your pick more or less for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash today. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite baseball players with players from basketball, hockey, esports, and much more. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So what do you think, Ohtani? Get more than one home run this week? Soto, more than one hit? LeBron James, more or less than 25 points? Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
So the last game of the season is always going to be a particularly fun one just because you get to see the guys that you don't get to see all year. Jordan Walsh, Neemias Queta, who has had kind of opportunities here and there. Miles Norris and Drew Peterson each played about 12 minutes. Neither of them did a whole lot. Miles had a great chase down block that got the bench excited. Drew's had his flashes in the NBA, certainly. I think both those guys, based off their intangibles, based on their ability to shoot, stretch the floor, do a bunch of different things. I could see them both in the NBA, honestly. They have the intangibles. I just don't know. I haven't seen them a whole lot. I'm not going to start vouching for them, wholeheartedly, but I'm excited about what both of them can bring to the table, especially Miles. He's tall, he's lengthy, he's athletic. And he can really shoot. He was over 3 in this game, but he can really shoot. He's shown that already on a number of occasions, and it's part of why they signed him. Shocker, I know. And so this was a fun game. This was a fun opportunity for the Celtics to close out the season with a win. I feel like they always win these season finales, which is, when you really think about it, it doesn't really matter if you're a good team in theory, because everybody's top 6 players usually rest on the season finales. And so a lot of times it comes down to your bench players, and it comes down to the expectation to win. And Joe's really prided himself and the team and this idea that we win these games. These games are not negotiable. It's not because the top guys are out. It's different. The same standard is in play. He said it a million times this season. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of been the way that he's approached things. I wrote a story that's out on Celtics blog now about the Stay Ready guys and kind of what it means to be in their position. And I talked to a couple of the players for that article. I talked to Jordan Walsh, Xavier Tillman, Neemias Queta about just what is it like to actually be a Stay Ready player? What's tough about it? How do you stay engaged? Because obviously it's one thing to say stay ready, just be ready to go. But what does that actually look like? And so I'll read some of the quotes that they shared. You can check out the full feature on Celtics blog, but let me read some of the quotes. So Jordan's focus is on boosting team morale. He said, just adding fuel to the fire, never taking anything away. Whatever way I do that, whether it's cheering at every possession when something happens, whether it's telling guys what I'm seeing, just dapping them up and telling them to keep shooting when they have a shot. It's all about team morale. Xavier Tillman said that he's noticing things on the sidelines. He said that he's looking at opposing players' tendencies, and he's not necessarily thinking, I'm going to get in, so this is benefiting me, but it's what can I point out to my teammates? He said, my mind is more so on how can I remind my guys the tendencies of the other team? And if you always think like that, like thinking about like, I'm going to check in, you shift away from being a helper. I like to shift my focus on helping everybody else out, and if I get called, I get called. Neemias Queta said that he's always simulating what he would do if he was in the game. He said, what would I have done in that possession? I'm seeing what my teammates are doing and just trying to understand from them how good they are in certain situations. And then all of them stressed to me that they're still going through their warm-ups. They're still going through and doing everything as though they might play in this game. So you never want to be caught like you didn't do your warm-ups, you didn't stretch, you didn't go 100% pregame, because your name might get called on. And Joe has already stressed that he does not give guys heads up. He does not say, hey, you're getting 15 minutes tonight. Like, it just happens. And so he's given everybody that chance. And different guys have looked readier than others. In this game, the Stay Ready crew came through. In Wednesday night in Orlando, they did not come through. And I think you could attribute that to a number of factors, including the fact they were playing a good Orlando team that really needed to win. Also, they landed at 4:30 in the morning from the Knicks game. It was the second night of a back-to-back. So just the travel and the sleep and everything was all kind of messed up. But I talked to Luke Cornett after the game. I asked him in his post-game media about, he's not a Stay Ready group guy anymore. Like, he has played a substantial number of minutes this season, 18 and a half minutes off the bench across 72 games. I think most people are expecting him to be a major contributor in the playoffs this season. And Luke, the biggest thing for him, and I asked him about, and he's talked about this a couple of times, but I asked him about kind of what the message was for those guys and kind of what he remembers from his DMPs. He said it's a lot of peace to come to life of accepting the position that you're in and then just doing the best with that versus trying to fight it and wanting to be in a different one. You can spend a lot of time worrying about things that you can't really control, but when you just take the opportunity that you have and do the best with that, you can have days like today where a lot of guys came in and were able to contribute. And so, yeah, Luke was in this spot that I think he finds himself in now. He's like a Stay Ready group graduate. I would put Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser in those categories too, where for right now, they're playing every night. They know they're going to play every night. They're not staying ready to play. They know they're going to play. And so they're able to kind of share that wisdom with the younger guys of like, hey, this is what I did that I was able to kind of get through it. And I think different guys struggle more. I think Pritchard is somebody that has vocally struggled. He wanted to be out there. He really had a hard time being benched. I think it's because Pritchard thinks, and this is my words, not his, but I think he thinks he can be an all-star, an MVP candidate. Like, I think he thinks the sky's the limit for him. And you see that with the confidence that he plays. I don't think necessarily Luke Cornett was sitting on the bench saying, I'm the best center in the world, and they're just not seeing it yet, right? Maybe that's a misread. I'm not going to say that those are their words, but I think sometimes that plays a factor as well in guys' ability to accept the situation that they're in. And I don't think this group of Stay Ready guys has been like every time they come in, they play awesome and they show you like, oh, the flashes of potential here are insane. Like, if only they had the minutes. They've struggled at points. Jordan Walsh has struggled at points. Xavier Tillman has dealt with some knee injuries. He got injections. Like, there's been a lot of things that he's battled with as well. And all of that, like, it's just, they've had to deal with it. And, there have been moments that were pretty rough and there were moments that have looked a lot better. And I thought that it was fitting that the season finale, they all looked a lot better. It was probably their high as a unit. And so you can check out that full story on Celtics blog as kind of all those guys reflect on what this past season was like, what this position of it is like, of just being a Stay Ready guy, getting DNPs, all of that. And I don't think we're going to see any of those guys in the playoffs, but they're still there along for the ride. So those guys still matter. Even if they're not there for the playoffs, they matter because they are a part of the locker room camaraderie. If you have negative energies on the bench, if guys that aren't paying attention, aren't focused, like, yeah, it's the bare minimum, but I don't think it's actually the case every single place you go. And there's a fun vibe that they've developed. Torrey Craig, I talked to him about it on the road trip. Like, he's embraced being this celebratory guy. He's embraced it. He says it's fun. So that's kind of the nature of how it's been. And you can kind of see it grow from there, that you have one guy being like that, it's Torrey Craig, it's Jordan Walsh, and the next thing you know, everybody's like that. And they have a lot of fun out there. A lot of times I literally leave my phone camera on the bench just because I think they have such fun reactions. Sometimes the TV cameras don't capture. But yeah, big takeaway from this season and from tonight is that unit, because they're not going to be the ones that get the credit or the blame. But they're very much still there. They're in the locker room and they're on the team plane, on the team bus, and their presence matters just like everybody else's. So I won't talk too much more about tonight's game. I'll just say a shout out to Peyton Pritchard for continuing his 3-game streak now of going for 30 points or more in the season finale. Shout out to Jordan Walsh and JD Davison, who hit big time shots down the stretch. And they haven't really been in that position before. I think both those guys, rare NBA minutes and rare NBA clutch time minutes, because when they do play, usually it's a blowout. And shout out to Joe Mazzulla, who coached that game like literally it was an NBA Finals game. You would never have known that this was just a meaningless regular season game. On the other side, you had Charles Lee, former Hornets, former Celtics assistant coach, now Hornets head coach, who also took this game very seriously. You could tell that as well. He got a tech. He was super locked in, and I think both teams really wanted to win this one, and the Celtics were able to come away with it, as they have many times over the years. This is totally empirical, but even just as a kid, I don't remember the Celtics ever losing these season finales. Like, I feel like they're so good at these meaningless games because there's a culture of winning, and the Garden's rocking. It was fan appreciation night today, and the fans were awesome. You never would have known that the top 6 players were resting. There was one big round of applause early on. I was like, oh, did I miss a windmill dunk or something? And no, it was just Jason Tatum coming out of the tunnel to sit on the bench next to Derek White, who had his son Hendrix on his lap. So that was a new kid addition. We normally don't see Derek White's kids in the mix. I think Derek, I would assume it's more just like Derek has his own routine of how he plays, and he doesn't, his kids are really young. But on this night where Derek White did not play, his son was on the bench with him as well for much of the night, which was cool. Or much of the afternoon. I keep saying night, but it was a 1 p.m. tip. So I'll just say, just closing out here, as I mentioned before, that I think that the big takeaway on this team, it has to be that the 61 games is pretty remarkable with all the adversity that they faced, with the fact that they did inevitably reach a championship hangover, whatever you want to call it. Like, there were lulls. The other teams that are up there, the Thunder, the Cavs, they didn't play through June last year. They played through early May. Like, these teams didn't even make the conference finals. And they came in rejuvenated. Their star players have never been to the biggest stage. Like, they're operating on a different playing field right now. Donovan Mitchell and SJ have never been there before. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they are fresh off a title. Tatum, Holiday, and White played in the Olympics. Like, they are in a different position. And so the fact that they were in the mix, even just ended up finishing a couple games behind the Cavs in the Eastern Conference, is a really good sign. So I'm not going to make any guarantees. I'm not going to make any promises, but I do think that this Celtics team is poised to repeat right now. All the signs are there. You can see the connection, the chemistry. Jason Tatum talked to us about it on Friday night, about how this team has so much fun together. The fact that they were able to bring everybody back. There is such a strong connection. They just love being around each other. They love playing the game of basketball together. He's particularly praised Luke Cornett and what a selfless player he is and how much they enjoy playing together. Alongside that, I think you look at other guys like, Peyton Pritchard, who had this special season on his own. Luke had a special season of his own. Al Horford, 38 years old, really not missing a step, nowhere near retirement, so locked in each and every night. You can just see all these different pieces come together. And this team had a pretty special run this season. As a regular season, I think it's everything that you could have hoped for. And the signs to me are all pointing in the direction of this being the group that breaks the dry spell in the NBA and actually goes back to back. And it's been 8 years since that's happened. I can't even remember. That felt so long ago that the Kevin Durant Warriors did it, and they came close to not doing it, despite having a super team and despite having all this talent. They almost didn't do it. Everybody remembers that Game 7 versus the Rockets, right? And they were able to get it done. And since then, we've seen these defending champs just flame out. And so I think the Celtics are first going to take things, first and foremost, they have to win round 1. It's going to be against Orlando or Atlanta. We'll know by Tuesday night who that is. And then after that, it's going to be Detroit or New York, one of those teams. And assuming they get through them, they could have a Cleveland Cavaliers conference finals and Oklahoma City Thunder finals. And if that's their path and they win the championship, all the doubts around last year's team had an easy path. There is no easy path there. That is a very, very difficult path. That could be a historically difficult path if you crunch the numbers because of how dominant both Oklahoma City and Cleveland have been this season. And so that's the run that I'm hoping for. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see them play the best of the best, the brightest stars in the league, Donovan Mitchell, SGA, Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, whoever it ends up being. Like, there could be a really rigorous pathway here. Obviously, there are doubts, there are concerns. Jalen Brown's knee is front of mind. But if you ask me right now today, I think they have all the pieces to do it. I think they get it done. We'll have live coverage on CLNS Media after every game on the Garden Report. We'll have all the post-game press conferences uploaded on YouTube as well. My podcast, I'm going to be doing it even more regularly in the playoffs. I was taking it kind of easy during the regular season, every couple of days here. Playoffs is going to be in a much more strict regimen. So if you want to lock in, you'll have episodes after every game for sure. I'll be going live more often as well, like I did in the finals last year. Thanks for following along. Thanks for watching. If there are things you want me to talk about, stories you want me to write, I wrote the Stay Ready story because somebody asked me to write it. So I can't even remember who, but somebody in some comment section said, it'd be cool if you went behind the scenes on the Stay Ready guys. And I said, okay, I'll do that. So if you have things you want me to look into, I'm happy to do so. But with that, I will end it here. Enjoy your couple days off from watching NBA basketball. I hope you guys can all find something else to do. Play-in tournament just a couple days away, though. So not too many days off. And enjoy the rest of your night. And thanks again for watching.